Hello everyone, welcome to this Urban Lab in a hybrid system. And this Urban Lab this afternoon is focusing on gender-balanced urban spaces and friendly placemaking. During this lab, we are going to discuss several topics related to placemaking methods, placemaking tools, how to make this happen, and especially related to gender-balanced urban spaces. And main questions would be how urban spaces can be designed in a more integrative, in a more cohesive way, so it means integrated, and how to transform these existing urban spaces and how to make this more appropriated into non-segregated and inviting urban spaces without barriers. So the topic of barriers is going to be very key here in this in a discussion today during this Urban Lab. And also we are going to talk about safety. Safety in public spaces and how can we make these spaces more safe and how to increase indeed the inclusion, so to make it better inclusion and social justice. These are the topics we are going to discuss here today during our Urban Lab. And for that, I would like to present you our speakers and our guests on the stage here. We have our first keynote, Nicholas Yu. He's a senior urban specialist and from Guangzhou, talking about Guangzhou Awards and urban innovation. And our second keynote speech is going to be done by Professor Ines Sanchez de Madariaga. She's from Madrid and she is online with us. And after the two keynotes, we're going to have a discussion with you here, the attendants and our other guests here. We have Milena Ivkovic, she's an urban planner and placemaking expert from Rotterdam, representing here in the Placemaking Europe organization. We are going to have Sri Sofian from Huairou Commission. She's going to be online with us also. We have Li Fan, Urban Planner Technical University from Berlin, and we have Patricia Alberts from the World Heritage Office. You are the lead of this office from the city of Bamberg. And I just heard that we have also Alexandra Kriegel from the city of Mannheim. She is going to be also involved online, and she's online with us. That's fine. So my name is Didier van Kutzheim. I'm Vice President of IFLA Europe. This is the International Federation of Landscape Architects. So let's start with our first presentation. Nicholas, I would like to ask you to deliver your keynote. Thank you. And looking forward to a nice discussion with all of you later.
Thank you very much, Didier, and greetings to you all. It's delightful to be here on a sunny day in Mannheim. First time I've been to the city, and I must say that I'm very impressed with its history, and especially the layout of the city. My talk today is going to be, as Didier alluded to, focused primarily on safety and justice, and also on the policy side. Because I'm a strong believer that unless we have the right policy framework, unless we have the right understanding of what are good policies or bad policies regarding gender, then it's very difficult for urban planners and urban designers, architects, etc., to do their job properly. It has to take place within a solid and robust policy framework. So I'm just going to try to answer 4 very basic questions. Let me preface what I'm about to present by saying that this is not just my work, it's the work that has been hashed out for quite some time now with my colleagues at United Cities Local Government and with Metropolis. They've been working on this issue for quite some time, and so I am more a messenger today than anything else. I think the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is a gender policy? Is it about responsiveness to a given situation? Is it about prevention? Is it about the right to the city? I think this is a very fundamental question. Or is it about transformation? And I'll give some examples of each of these and explain why I think they are important. First of all, what are responsive policies? Responsive policies are when, obviously, as the word denotes, it's after the fact. You already have gender inequality, you have gender inequity, or you have gender violence, and you're trying to respond to that. And I think there are several tools that can help us make our policies more responsive. One of them was alluded to this morning, and I think it's very important, is that we need to have gender-sensitive data. Without gender-sensitive data, we simply do not know what we're talking about. Right? And one of the most effective tools I've come across is the safety audits. And when we conduct these safety audits in communities and neighborhoods and cities, we find that the response by men, women, and girls are very, very different. The other one is gender disaggregated data and information, and this goes together with the safety audits or mapping, because once you put together your safety audits and you break down the information in a gender-sensitive way, you can have what we call gender-sensitive mapping. And that can tell many already urban administrators, urban planners, urban designers, where are the gray areas? Where are the areas where especially women and girls do not feel safe or do not feel that they have equal access? And this brings us to the whole notion of how do you actually define a safe urban space? And I don't think there is any better definition than to ask the people who are primarily concerned. Do you feel safe? It's as simple as that. I don't believe that we should use any more sophisticated sociological or other tools to help us define what an urban space is than to ask women and girls on a regular basis, on a periodic basis, do you feel safe at this bus stop? Do you feel safe in this metro station? Do you feel safe in this public square, etc.? And that is what another prevention, of course, is gender-sensitive policing. And this is key because I think for too many decades we found out that the police were simply not gender-sensitive. Women would come and complain about violence, about sexual harassment, about other issues, and we had a male-dominated police force that just ignored what they were saying. And I think this is very important. It's like what we mentioned this morning. If we really want to be inclusive, we have to speak the languages of people we want to include. Here, it's the same thing. If we want to be gender sensitive, we have to speak the language that women and girls speak when they feel that they are victims of sexual harassment and public insecurity. Preventative policies, on the other hand, are designed to enhance safety and security. And this we can do very different ways. We can do that by redesigning, if you want, the physical environment, right? And this, I think, is very important. We will be talking about this in the panel, as Didier mentioned, about the barriers that prevent people, and especially women and girls, feeling safe and secure. You can also change the social environment, and I think this is very important. And finally, I think it's very important that we also look at how we revisit our public services. Now, here are a few cases I would just like to bring up. Actually, all of these were born from a case that dates back almost 30 years, which was the city of Montreal. It was the first city I knew of in the world where buses after dark would let women and girls get off between two stops. Right? So the whole idea was to allow women that did not feel particularly safe after dark to be able to ask the bus driver to stop anywhere between two stops so that they were closer to their final destination. But the examples that have been born since are quite amusing, and it shows you how we can be more preventative and more responsive depending on the cultural context we are in. So one of these images is the pink buses of Mumbai and New Delhi. So women in India, especially those who have to commute and go to work and send children to school and do whatever, have been complaining for decades of sexual harassment on buses. It is a major issue in India. They tried everything, putting police on the buses, putting all kinds of preventative measures. The only measure that they were able to come up with is to have women-only buses. Okay? That's the Indian solution. The pink buses, only women are allowed on the bus, and only sitting room only. You cannot stand in these buses. They're very well equipped, they're very comfortable. They are designed for the commuting woman who has to go to work every day, drop off kids, etc. They're air conditioned, and they have Wi-Fi, and you can plug in your phone. Everybody knows women have to be multitasking all the time, so communication is a very important aspect. Mary Safe Bus is in Papua New Guinea, where it just means Women Safe Bus, and again, it's the same thing. The buses are designed during certain hours of the day, only women can board. And when there are mixed users on the bus, women can only be seated. There will be no room for standing on the bus. So I think this is another case of where we have a cultural adaptation of how we can prevent sexual harassment, how we can present harassment in general. Changing the social environment is also a very interesting take, and I think this is very important. It's how we perceive how public space is to be used. Now, in China, public squares were rarely used by women. It was a male, China is just like many other countries, a male-dominated society. But something has happened in the last 15 years or so that has changed completely the use of public space in Chinese cities. And it's called granny dancing. We have an aging population in China. We have a lot of grandmothers. Because women have a much higher life expectancy than men in China, we have a lot of elderly women that are single. And being Chinese, I can tell you that these women most probably never were fully able to express themselves, physically, emotionally, otherwise. But what is happening almost every night in Chinese city squares is nothing short of amazing. If my mother saw it, she would be shocked. They are completely dominated by women 60 years and older dancing. And not just dancing, normal dancing, they're dancing in a very sensual manner. It is quite amazing to see this. And that is what I call a major change in social behavior in public spaces, to the point that men are complaining. And most probably that's a good thing. When men start complaining, it means you're doing something right. Another issue is, okay, how can you use technology also to help prevent sexual harassment and violence against women? Here on the bottom left, you see a picture of a bus. These are the new electric buses that are being implemented everywhere in China today. Just so for your information, the two cities I work with, Shenzhen and Guangzhou, they both converted their entire bus fleets within a year to electric. Now, the advantage of electric buses is that they are smart buses by definition. You do not design an electric vehicle to be stupid, right? You don't have an engine anymore, you don't have moving parts, you're using electricity. Everything is smart on an electric bus. And what China's response to preventing violence and sexual harassment on the bus is digital. The entire bus is being filmed all the time. Right? So you have a permanent video record of what's happening inside the bus. The bus driver can see what's happening inside the bus. And if he notices something amiss, he pushes a button and that video is sent to the police station. Right? So it's as simple as that. It's a preventative measure. I can guarantee you no man is going to try to sexually harass a woman on an electric bus in China today. Your face will most probably splash on public television at the 8 o'clock news that evening if you did something bad. So those are preventative policies, but are they enough? I don't think they are enough. And one of the key questions is now the right to the city. And I don't think we can talk about gender equity, gender equality in the city unless we talk about the right to the city. And I think this is especially the case with emerging economies, but not only. I live 6 months a year in Nairobi, in Kenya, where we have one of Africa's largest slums, known as Kibera. I've been working in Kibera now on and off for about 20 years. Now, when I first arrived in Kenya, 40 years ago, sorry, women weren't allowed to open up a bank account alone. Either the husband had to be the co-signatory or some male member of the family. And of course, needless to say, that put women in a very, very dependent situation on men. Now, one small revolution, technological innovation, changed that entirely 10 years ago. And that was an application called M-Pesa, which means mobile money, which was the first ever mobile money application in the world, was invented in Kenya, right? And it's still the mother of all mobile money applications. And that entirely transformed the lives of women, entirely. They all of a sudden had a bank account in their pocket. And the amazing thing is that M-Pesa doesn't need a smartphone. It can use a dumb phone. So your old Nokia, which you can use as a hammer, can also be used for mobile money transactions in Kenya. But on top of that, most of the people living in the informal sector, the majority of whom are women and single mothers, didn't have an access to a whole host of other services because they did not have an address. Now, some of you urban planners and urban specialists might remember that there was a movement in the 60s and the 70s called adressage. It was invented by the French, and it was basically the recognition that if you don't have an address in a city, you are nobody, right? In the Anglo-Saxon system, it's your LR number or the lease that you signed, the lease number that you signed, LR meaning lot registration number. So either you're owner of a house and you have an LR number, or you're a leasee, you've rented something and you have a lease number. In France, it's actually a street name and a street number in the French system. Without these, you have no right to the city, right? You can't register your child for school. The hospital might be right next door, and Kibera is right next to Nairobi's biggest hospital, but nobody in Kibera could go to the hospital because without that number, that magic number, you were simply not a citizen of the city. So women, it was double whammy for women living in the informal sector and working in the informal sector. No right to open a bank account, no right to register children in school, no right to go to the hospital in case of illness, etc. Right. So all of these things have to be addressed simultaneously if we are to talk about true gender equity and true gender equality. Housing, another key issue. For a single mother in most African, Latin American countries I know of, it's not easy to get housing, especially affordable housing. Finally, finance. This is another gigantic barrier, and we as urban specialists, as people who manage the city, we have a responsibility to look at these things. women typically do not have the same access to finance as men do, right? And if you think about that, if you don't have access to finance, how do you have access to loans? How do you start a business? All entirely out of cash flow? Very difficult. Finally, access to education, health, as I mentioned, but also I think what all this points to is that we have to recognize, as a city, we have to recognize informality. Right? 60% of people in African cities live in informal settlements, 40% in Latin America, 50% more or less in Asia, South Asia. Unless we recognize informality in all of its dimensions, we are automatically excluding the most vulnerable, the poorest, and among them, the majority are women. Finally, I would like to talk about transformative policies. And I think this is very, very important, because without transforming our policies, much too often we'll be going back to business as normal. We will try minor fixes, design safer spaces, put in safer buses, put in more gender-sensitive public services, but in the end, we have to change attitudes. And the first thing we have to do is we have to challenge gender norms. And this is not easy. It's not easy, and at the same time, we have to change the gender roles and the power inequities. So here I'm going to give you 4 examples, which I think are important. The first one on the right-hand upper quarter is simply one of challenging gender roles. Right? This, I don't think, could have happened 10 years ago. Have a woman referee giving a red card to an all-male football team. Not possible. It happened during the last World Cup, so already I think we're having some progress. Changing gender roles is also very important, and here you have a picture of school children, especially boys, being taught how to sew. Right? This also, when I went to school, would not have been possible. But I think it's important, because in order to challenge the norms that we're so accustomed, in order to change the roles, we have to change the way we educate our children, and especially the boys. Right? Some changes in education of girls has to happen as well, but I think it's very important that we start at a young age to change the way we educate boys regarding gender roles. Changing power inequities is also a very major challenge, and I would like here just to refer to a case study which is in Turkey. And the picture you have before you is the mayor, a man, of Mezzetli in Turkey, surrounded by women. And who are these women? Well, in Turkey, just like many parts of that part of the world, if you go to the souk, if you go to the market, it's entirely male-dominated. You won't find a woman selling anything. Right? Typical of that part of the world. Anybody who's selling you anything, including women's lingerie, is a man. Right? So you, as a woman, want to buy a pair of panties, it's going to be a man who sells you those panties. Right? So the mayor of Mezzetli decided this had to change in his city, and what he created was women-only markets. Now, the market is free. There's no fee. You don't have to pay for it. You do have to respond to certain conditions. And those conditions is either you grew something, because a lot of these women were recent immigrants from Syria, and the immigrants from Syria to Turkey were slightly different than the immigrants from Syria to Germany. The immigrants to Turkey from Syria were rural people, not urban people. So a lot of these people immediately were able to find livelihoods by going back to farming practices, animal husbandry practices, etc. So that's one criteria that you can qualify to becoming the proud occupier of a stall in the women's only market. The other one is that you produce something out of your own sweat equity, cooking a dish, preparing some food, handicrafts, etc. They started off with one market. Today there are 12 women's-only markets in Mezzetli, giving jobs to over 6,000 women. And for the first time, for most of these women, the first time they have independent income. So I think that we can say is a change in the power inequity, right? Is that you have now empowered that part of the population to be independent, to earn an income, right? And to be able to decide, hopefully, what they want to do with that income. So basically, in conclusion, what I like to remind you of is that we need a continuum between these policies. I'm an urban planner, but I'm saying that we have to look at all of these different types of policy responses in order to build a gender equal, a gender equitable city. We need to continue to prevent, we need to continue to respond, we need to continue to focus our policies, our procedures, our bureaucracies on the issues that most affect women. And finally, we need to be able to measure those. We need to measure the outcomes, and I believe in this day and age, when I started the gender analysis in UN Habitat some 25 years ago, we were just talking about gender disaggregated data. I think today we have to talk about analyzing trans-sectional outcomes. We're not just dealing anymore with men, boys, women, and girls. We're dealing, if we want to have a gender equity in our cities, we're going to have to talk intersectional. And that includes all the different genders in between. Thank you very much for your attention. That's my brief presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for this. I think it's quite inspiring also while you're talking about transformative policies and then becoming also, and also the case of prevention, right? And yes, always thinking ahead. No, give it to me. Yes, thank you. And moving forward, talking about the no returning back to normal as usual, but always thinking about transforming the city in a better way. Our next keynote, she's online, Mrs. Ines, are you there? Ines Sanchez de Madariaga. That's nice to meet you. Hello, Ines. Welcome to the stage. I hope we can hear you and that the sound is working. If you can activate your mic, it would be nice. And then we are looking forward to your presentation. There is what?
Hello?
Yes, now it's fine.
Yes. Hello.
Sound is on. Yes. Thank you, Ines.
Okay.
Looking forward. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ines. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ines. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Let's hope you can share your screen. If not, we have the presentation also here.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here with you. I hope you can hear me. Please do let me know if you don't.
We can hear you, but we cannot see your presentation.
I will explain the work that we have been doing to integrate gender into...
Wait a moment. We would like to have also your presentation on site. technology is always a challenge, huh? So, I mean, I can see also the presentation here on the screen, so I could deliver the presentation if you want, but I think it's better if Ines is doing it, yeah? But she's going to talk about gender-specific design of urban spaces and places. I don't have any communication with her. So no internet. That's fine. Nice challenges, huh? Really nice challenges. I mean, what we can do is we can move forward with the discussion and then wait till she's joining us again. And what do you think? We wait? No, we move forward, right? Okay, that's good. So then it's an excellent occasion to have a discussion with our panelists here. And as long as they are working there with the technology, then we can have a discussion, especially also related to special situation in Germany and other places in Europe, right? And what do you think, Patricia, about the situation in Bamberg, and especially also the relationship with the World Heritage situation you have in Bamberg, and also the challenges of having open spaces, accessible to all, gender balance, and the situation to have it in a sense friendly, I mean, accessible to all, the right to the city, in fact, yeah. What do you think? What would be your position there? Yes, now it's on. That's very good.
Excellent. Thanks. That's an exciting question.
The issue is the issue of gender violence and universal design, because the perception of safety in the city is a key aspect for women, and also the reality of the actual safety that there can be or not be in public space and in transport.
You are now unmuted.
Sorry? Is there any problem?
Yes. Ines.
Yes?
There is
Please
a lot
let
of...
me know.
It's a nice challenge.
Do let me know. You don't see my screen, or you don't hear
Exactly, we don't see your screen. Would it be possible, Ines?
What is the problem? Yes.
Okay. Apparently there was a problem with
What's the problem?
sharing your screen, right? And the presentation here. I don't know what is then the solution, but maybe Ines, would it be possible if we are sharing the presentation here, yes, and you are explaining the slides? Is it possible?
I don't understand. I'm not hearing the German track. I can't have the screen for speaking and the English track at the same time. So I don't understand what has been said because I don't hear the translation.
Okay, so Ines, listen, can you start your presentation from the beginning? Yes? We can see your presentation here in the room.
You can't?
We can see your presentation now, and it would be nice if you can start your explaining and your presentation from the beginning now.
Okay.
Yes? Very good. Then the first slide is your introduction. So gender-specific design, the title of your presentation. Can you see it?
I'm not seeing, but I'm not seeing in my screen the presentation that you have.
Okay, so let's move to the second.
How can I see your screen so that I know on which?
Okay, I will tell you. So we have now, we can see your first slide, okay? And now I'm moving to the next.
Can you move to the next?
Yes, sexual and gender-based violence.
Okay.
Good.
So are you going to move my presentation?
No, we are listening. We are listening now to you, and if you can explain and describe your slide, sexual and gender-based violence, that would be good.
Okay. Well, I don't know how we're going to manage this because I don't hear you on the same page as the.
So the slide is, the title of the slide is Sexual and Gender-Based Violence, and you want to talk about SGBV, about the Beijing Declaration and gender mainstreaming.
The problem is that I cannot see the screen and hear to English at the same time. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So in that sense, I don't think it's possible.
And I cannot move my presentation either. Couldn't I project from my computer, which would be much easier?
Can you stop your presentation, please? Stop sharing your presentation. Okay.
Naja, die hört unser Deutsch, kann man den Stream bedienen.
Ja, warum guckt ihr den Stream an? Warum
ist es auf der, in der, wir sind ja auch drin.
We are listening to you. Ines, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I am here.
Okay. Please, stop sharing your screen and simply describe what you mean with gender mainstreaming. Yes? I think it's quite important for us.
Okay. So, let's go ahead with the presentation.
Yes.
It's important when we speak about gender in planning that we understand the concept of gender mainstreaming, which was coined in 1995 in the Beijing conference.
Yes.
Please don't move the slide.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So gender mainstreaming is a process for the implementation of gender equality policies that was defined in 95, and that it means that gender has to go through at all scales of the policy processes and throughout the cycle of policy. Let me see if I can.
This one? You want to talk this one? Hello, Ines, are you still there?
Yes, you know, I'm listening to the German translation at the same time that I speak, so it's very difficult to speak while I'm listening, and I cannot mute the German translation without unmuting myself.
Oh, I see.
So it's a highly difficult. Let me try this. Let's see if I can. Let me see now if I can. If I found another way.
Yes.
Let's see if I've been able. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please. We can hear you.
Okay. So gender mainstreaming is a concept that was developed in '95 to ensure that gender was implemented throughout the policy cycle at all levels and throughout all the stages of any field of policy. In our case, it is urban planning, and this was to complement previous approaches to gender equality that were implemented through specific organisms or offices addressing specifically women's issues. So it was evident that this was not enough, and that to really affect all the main areas where policy should be gender mainstreamed, you really needed to go through the policy to go there, not to just stay in a specific women's office. So the concept of gender mainstreaming is a very important concept because it implies a policy approach, and this is what we're talking about when we talk about gender getting gender into planning. Can we go to the next, please? We need also to consider another important concept, which is the concept of intersectionality. It's a more recent idea, although it was also coined by the late 80s, that looks at the fact that women are, because women are half of the population, they are not just a single or a unique experience of the city, but there's a complexity and a diversity of realities among women. It's half of the population. So the concept of intersectionality that was developed in the context of the reality of African American women in the United States tells us that we need to look at factors that are compounded with the fact of being women. And how this compounding of factors, such as being Black and being a woman, which was the case in the original conceptualization of intersectionality, implies specific realities that need to be addressed as such. So now we consider intersectionality. Can we go to the next, please? As compounding how gender interacts with age, with disability, with ethnicity, and with many other factors such as geographical location, obviously sexuality, refugees, social and economic status, and other issues. But those are the main. So when we look at public space, I will focus my presentation today only in public space, as I thought it was the focus of the session, and not as I will not refer at planning generally, but only at public space. When we look at public space and women, we need to also look at these differences that the use of public space by elderly women is not the same as by young women or for mothers and so on. So you really need to look at how the compounding factors can be relevant to how you address gender equality in public space. Can we go to the next, please? So we know that gender and safety in public space it's a highly gendered issue. And we also know that the important thing is the perception of safety, and there has been a very important methodology that was developed in Canada in the 1990s, which are the safety audits, which are an important instrument to help design more gender-sensitive public spaces, but looking to the quality and the use of those spaces, and also to safety considerations. Can we go to the next one, please? I would like to make this reference to how the safety audits that are being widely used as a tool, as a specific tool for the design of public spaces from a gender perspective. They have these two main goals. The first is gathering information about women's experience, the use of public space and urban services in order to improve urban planning policies and practice, and also to empower women in urban policies such as housing, public facilities, urban safety, mobility, etc. So it's an instrument that combines participation and planning technical knowledge to gather information and to empower women in issues that are relevant to their daily lives. Can we go to the next? Why to do them only with women? Or why to do them specifically with women? First, because women are one that make greatest use of public space and facilities in everyday life. One of the big concepts that we need to be aware that has been introduced into planning because of gender perspectives is the concept of care. Care, which is understood as those activities realized in everyday life for the upkeep of the home and the caring of those people who don't have autonomy in the city, such as the young and the elderly, is a key concept from a gender perspective. And it's women who perform mostly all these care activities. So when we do the safety audits with women, we get to understand how these care activities are performed in urban space and what are the implications for transportation. So it's a key concept for any gendered approach to planning and urban design. And when we have women doing these audits in urban space, we have them with a double profile, which means a very broad vision, because they do this as citizens and also as caregivers. So they are really experts, maybe in a way unconsciously, in the quality of urban environments and facilities. And they are more sensitive to specifically issues of safety, which in many parts of the world are key issues for urban space, and also of quality issues in relation to urban services, facilities, and public space. And they are usually less involved in participatory processes. So doing them specifically with women, it's very important, because otherwise women tend to participate less in these processes if you don't target them specifically. So their specific needs tend to be unknown and not prioritized in policy agendas and in planning agendas. Can we get to the next, please? So the audits, the public space audits that were developed in Montreal in the early 1990s had these key principles that are very well known, because they have been used widely by the Safer Cities programs throughout the world. Knowing where you are and where you go. And this implies signaling, orientation, hear and be heard, vitality of public spaces and presence of people, see and be seen, lighting and visual fields of visibility are important here, the ability to escape and get some help, formal and informal surveillance, access to emergency services, environments that are clean and well maintained, accessibility, materiality, furniture and design, and then the community and group identity. I see that the person who translates is not moving anymore. I don't know if she doesn't hear me. A sense of community, appropriation of the public space, participation and representation. So these principles, as you know, what we do with them is we adapt it to different contexts, and also we adapt it to different groups of women. Can we go to the next, please? And to the next. And to the next. Okay, we have applied those for the planning of various neighborhoods in different parts of the country, particularly in Madrid, with these phases of planning, the workshops with the women, and then the diagnosis, which is a technical diagnosis that comes with recommendations. What we do is we complement the audits with the women with a technical analysis. We put these two together and we come up with recommendations that are shared and given back to the women, and then they are also given to the local authorities. Can we go to the next, please? Yes. So we look at the specific mix of intersecting factors that can be relevant in the specific area that we are analyzing, so that we can get this added value of the intersections that can be more relevant in specific neighborhoods. For instance, a neighborhood that is mostly made up of young families with kids, or a neighborhood that has a higher percentage of elderly people or a higher percentage of immigrant population, we tend to focus on those more relevant intersecting factors to do the audits with those women, with those profiles, so that we get a more relevant analysis by adding up these compounding factors that add to gender, all these other relevant factors such as ethnicity or race or socioeconomic status. Can we go to the next, please? Okay, and we add this, so the reporting phase, we add this added factor of the intersectional analysis as well, so that the participants are represented in the reporting phase. And next, please. Okay, here you can see some examples of the result of those analyses, of how the routes for the walks are defined according to the preferences or the criteria that are defined in the initial workshop. Next, please. And then we do the last phase, which is the dissemination and return to the women themselves and to the relevant public and private organizations that are working in the specific neighborhood. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, I would like also to mention that we have in Spain now also an interesting experience by the public authorities in charge of the trains, of managing the railways and the train stations, particularly the high-speed train stations. And this public authority that belongs to the Ministry of Public Works is in charge of the renewal of those train stations, and they are integrating gender criteria into the design and the architectural and urban design projects for the renewal of these very important transportation infrastructures. Here I'm showing you one example of how a high-speed train goes through a small population, and all the recommendations regarding gender that were introduced into the project of both the train station and also the immediate segment of the railway as it goes through the town. Next, please. And the same here for another station. This one is a very big one in San Sebastián in the north of Spain. And you see the aspects that were looked at. It's about orientation, about accessibility, about surveillance, and about care and conciliation. Next, please. So this is just a summary of what are the contributions and inputs from the women's audits. They are called safety audits because of its origin in Montreal, but they are not only safety, as you see. They integrate issues of quality and of care as well as of safety. So some of the contributions and inputs that came out from these audits are detecting why women do not use certain facilities or public spaces or infrastructures, detecting which groups of women have less access to participation and information in urban planning processes, integrating gender perspectives into the participatory processes that originally did not include this approach, setting priority action lines within the urban regeneration objectives in each context, creating women working groups, empowering social-like departments compared with other departments of a more technical nature in organizations, bringing urban planning proposals and projects closer to the citizens, obtaining information for other larger participatory processes, detecting gender and age biases in previous participatory processes, establishing technical guidelines and recommendations that arise from a participation that are directed ad hoc to urban planning agencies whether in the operational phase or in the drafting phase, and consolidating gender perspectives as an analytical tool of value and innovation in urban planning. Can we go to the next, please? It's important to have some ground rules about applying intersectionality in these groups. We know that we need to lead with openness, with care and respect, focus on listening, have one conversation at a time, don't speak over others, and try to balance the contributions from individuals. This is a problem often in participatory processes, that the person who speaks higher or most often, if this is not taken care of, the voices are not heard equally. Build on each other's ideas, noting as you go the different intersecting factors that surface in the conversation. Allow the conversations to expand and explore multiple intersecting factors. Avoid rushing to get to solutions. Take time in understanding how this process of getting everyone and all the overlapping factors and how this works. Be sensitive to each other's learning experience, because mistakes are obviously likely to be made, and respect the confidentiality and anonymity requests made by the group and or individuals. Sometimes we are dealing with very sensitive issues in these groups, and these ground rules are very important to be taken into account at all times. Can we have the next, please? So I'm going to leave it here. I would like to note that we have launched the Women's New European Bauhaus, which is an initiative that is a partner of the New European Bauhaus that addresses these things among others. And it's a new initiative that we launched it recently in the context of the November 25th day against violence against women. Can we have the next, please? So thank you, and I'm finishing here this presentation, in which I just wanted to focus on this specific issue of the public space, but I didn't want to finish without making a reference to the fact that we do have now a quite wide experience of a practical implementation in wider terms at all scales of planning, not only public space, but also urban planning at municipal scale, urban planning and territorial planning at the regional scales, and also gender integration into transportation plans, so that looking at the scale of public space itself, which is like the smaller scale, it's a key thing because it's what is more immediate. But this has to be integrated into the wider consideration, and by making full use of all the instruments that planning gives us, all the technical instruments, ranging from land use legislation to regional plans, to urban scale plans, to neighborhood plans, down to the small scale of urban design at the scale of public space. So this is our objective as we integrate gender into planning, that we are making full use of all the instruments that planning gives us, and at all scales. This is what gender mainstreaming is about, also in planning. So I will finish it here. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry about the technical issues. Thank you.
Ines, please stay with us, right? Is it? Yeah. And so if you have questions, then we can also address the questions immediately with you online. Yes? Do we have also, I see that Mrs. Kriegel is with us. That's good. Hello. I hope that. They can hear? No? Okay.
I can hear you now.
Now you can hear me. Okay.
I can now.
Excellent.
I can now.
Fantastic. Finally, the technology is working.
I hope it came through.
It's very nice. Do you know if Sri is also here? Fantastic. Hello, Sri. Welcome.
Yes, I'm here.
Very good. Very good. Now that you are all here, that's great. So we can start maybe the discussion, right? Based on the especially the question mentioned before by Ines about safety in open spaces, right? And maybe Sri, you can mention a little bit your experience on this topic, open space, and especially in your country, and the question of safety in open spaces, and what do you think about design? Is it needed to have a redesign of these open spaces? And if yes, how you could make it? That would be very interesting to listen to you. Would you like to share your experience with us?
Thank you, Didier, and thank you for having me in this urban lab, which focus on gender equality, women's empowerment, and also the link and how women function and what are the requirements for them to function. Ines laid out actually what the theory and also shared practical experiences from different region and also the global experiences and also from the safety audit. Now, I would like to share not the perspective from the urban poor women and not particularly just from Malaysia. I'm from Malaysia. My name is Sri Husnaini Sofjan. I'm linked with the Huairu Commission, which is a global network with membership of grassroots group in 40 countries with over 100 organizations, and our membership total up to at least 1 million, and I'm also a co-chair of the World Urban Campaign. Now, when we talk about gender equality, urban spaces, we have to think about the built environment, obviously. And the built environment, include almost everything, and open spaces, open public spaces are the important one, because open public spaces include the road, include the pavement, include parks, and many others. And what is the accessibility for women in this, and why it is very important? See, the question that was given to me is that what if urban spaces cannot be designed in cohesive and integrated way? And then the question was from the negative kind of perspective. But I would like to say it in a positive perspective. If open spaces, if public spaces include the gender dimension and was designed with the gender lens, then we will have, women who are citizens, can contribute more to the economy, can be active participant in the society. Now, for example, public spaces in Malaysia that in the state of Penang, what happened is that they have, for example, a night market. And so the night market makes sure that they have provide care for children, so that the women or vendors can then participate and don't have to think about, the safety of the children. Yeah? And these are things that was done through the gender participatory and responsive budgeting process. Yeah? And so that is one way to ensure that we can transform and change, what was done before or what was not done before by having a participatory project, a participatory initiative where men and women are actually have decision making and contribute to what is the priority for their community, for their city, and for the municipality. Yeah. So when places are more safe, people go out. People are more happier. There's less tension. There are more cohesiveness. So these are important aspects of the city for our city to actually thrive and be a place where we can call those places as our home. Yeah. So these are important items or important elements.
Okay.
I wanted to also bring the concept or the advocacy by the World Urban Campaign when we talk about the city we need now. Yeah? When the city is inclusive and gender equality is a key element used to make decision making, then we were able to contribute to the achievement of SDG 1, which is to elevate or eliminate poverty. We can, ensure that SDG 4, quality education, access education for girls and boys will, ensure their safety to move around are ensured. We will make sure that we contribute to SDG 5, and Ines mentioned this very specifically. We will contribute to also SDG 10, reducing inequality. And we will also, of course, we will definitely contribute to SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities.
Okay.
Now, urban planning and design that include the gender lens, will also contribute to SDG 9, building resilient infrastructure. So resilient here is not just, safety from natural disaster, but resilient here is also when the people in the community, when men and women can participate fully, and then they are more resilient. They will, be able to do what they want to do. Yeah.
Excellent.
And
listen.
also SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production.
Very good.
And also achievement of SDG, the climate action.
Good.
So these are, concept and advocacy that the city we need, which is a document, a manifesto of the World Urban Campaign. And
you mean this document, huh? You mean this document?
Which is part of the platform that promote sustainable cities through the World Urban Campaign.
Yes. Sri,
thank you.
We have other guests here around the table, so I would like also to ask and to pass this question to them. Yes, please stay and also with us. Yeah,
I will.
Very good, very good. So we are going to talk about Mannheim at the end of the discussion, okay? So we're now moving to the people here on the table, and then maybe you can mention also a little bit examples from your experience, from Bamberg, for example, what about this quality of the open spaces, and also related to the question of safety. So would be nice to listen some examples from you. Patricia, yes?
I would passionately like to applaud Mannheim for dedicating space and resources to this forum on gender-sensitive urban planning, because I'm not sure whether my city would see the necessity to do so. So
good point.
I really pay respect to you for this step. And now we move to Bamberg, to the north. To the north of Bavaria. To give you a rough idea, we have 80,000 inhabitants, around 12% students, and an organically grown city. We are a World Heritage Site, we have a historic city center, and as such I find that very gender sensitive because it's a structure that grew according to the needs of the people, men, women, children, or mostly men and women. But women, I think, also imply or bring in the needs of the children, as opposed to cities that are modern cities that are investor-driven, where very different interests come into play. On top, Bamberg has remarkably more women than men living in the city, yet the mindset is very male-oriented. I would like to give you two examples. I am the World Heritage Manager. I work in the Department of Culture, and 3 years ago we opened our new building. We have now an exhibition on the World Heritage site and so on, our own office. So to get there, we had to buy furniture, we had to give orders for the interior and everything. So I went to a local kitchen producer and we had a talk. I said I need a kitchen, this and that design. We had a discussion for 1 hour, and then he sent me out like, now please check with your boss whether you're allowed to spend that money and whether he approves your design. And also to get back to your office and do some work instead of sitting here. And I was really shocked. Of course, we didn't buy the kitchen there, but that's typical, that understanding that women cannot take proper decisions, that they are not entitled to spend resources. And that was not a single case. That happened when I wanted to buy a car. I didn't even get to get advice because I was just a woman. Where is your husband? So I had to buy my car somewhere else, which was a waste of my time, but okay. And also I support the election team when we have elections in Bavaria or local elections. Usually I also join one of those teams, and very often we have couples who come to the election, booth, and the man wants to go in there and make a cross for his wife and himself. And of course we have to tell them, no, that's not possible. Every person has to go to the booth individually. They're like, no, that's how we function as a couple. Don't you worry, we've been doing this always. And that is the mindset that is still prevalent, supported by a leadership that is 100% male.
Are you talking about Germany and talking about Bamberg?
I'm talking about Bamberg. We have
this is impressive.
A Lord Mayor, male. Mayor, male. Third Mayor, male. And everyone in the top league is male. And while you, of course, can foster participation processes where women get a say, what credibility has such a process when you know you're looked at someone who says something which is not to be taken seriously. Of course, Ines talked about the participation processes. Of course, as a woman, I will not go there to waste my time because I have care tasks. I am working, I have other things to do. Why would I join a process where my voice is being overheard from my previous experiences? So that's the situation.
Thank you. Very impressive. Lee, can you contribute to the discussion, or is it now over?
Okay, yes. I can also complain a lot, but that's not my main topic today. But I can give some hint, some tips, some my feeling, or some also this intercultural communication. I'm from China, but I live in Germany for many years, so I know situation in both countries. So generally speaking, it's always imagined that, of course, in Germany the public space is more integrative design than certain countries. For example, they has not yet paid more attention to public space. At the moment, they're still in the development process for to host people for housing, for example, which giving more priority than inclusive public space. Which is certainly true, and I also admit that there in China, the public space, they're really lack of design for quality, and they are really dangerous public spaces, and they are also reporting and researched, and then they are also disabled people. It's dangerous for them to go outside the house. So in China, you hardly see in big cities disabled people, they go alone by themselves. Rather in Germany, I meet much more case for disabled people. And also, I was in a tourism fair in Berlin, ETB. There was a Chinese exhibition for tourism marketing, and there were disabled visitors come to the Chinese pavilion and asked, is there any special service for disabled travelers to travel to China? So I was asked because I was there, and also I was happy, and the other booths and many exhibitors from China so far away to come to Germany to do marketing, and there wasn't any tourism route for disabled people. So it's not only about gender, not only about children and disabled, so generally inclusion is still really a big challenge, and it's not yet put in the working agenda of urban planning or levels of authorities or civil society. So this I can confirm. And also when we talk about Germany, I live in Berlin for many years. So Berlin is actually a pioneer in gender mainstreaming, already starting from early of 2000. So they already have this women's office to go through all the planning process, and until today it's still there. So in every step of urban planning in Berlin, there is a women's office to give their contributions, their opinions, and it's a team of both professionals and volunteers and non-professionals. And then it came to the gender mainstream, what Ines also mentioned. So Berlin is also pioneer in this gender mainstream now. The idea of gender mainstream is not only the responsibility of planning office, but also across sector, so intersector awareness of gender mainstream, and also it's integrated in the building code, the German Federal Code for Building. Also, there's certain article on gender mainstream. So at least at the awareness level, it's quite generally conceived and recognized, like the role of gender. But what I want to emphasize is that gender equality is not only the responsibility of government, not only the responsibility of authority. Of course, government should take the leading role, not what Mannheim is doing today is really great. And I don't see such public discussion in Berlin. So, but instead it's responsibility of all the actors. And we as urban planners, we design the space, but we integrate, coordinate different stakeholders to integrate their ideas, but not our own like architects to have some fantastic ideas, but more to have socialized ideas. And also civil society and all levels of stakeholders should take responsibility for gender mainstream. And also, in many cases, at policy level, it's very difficult to change in the short term. Also, design also may have difficulties, but there are different ways to go to that direction, from master planning to small-scale intervention, which can be very low cost, which can be community-led interventions. So that's the direction what we should all make efforts. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Fantastic. If you say something that Mannheim, it is great what is doing here, I would like to ask also Mrs. Kriegel if she can confirm also what you are saying. Mrs. Kriegel.
Ja, schönen guten Tag. Bin ich zu verstehen?
That's right. So let's continue in German. I would love to do that. Of course, I'm pleased to be a part of this urban lab campus. And I have considered many things here before. What's the message that we as organizer of this urban lab, what things we have already achieved or where we still have to keep working? So in advance of this event, we are a city-operated company and involved in the designing of green spaces, of playgrounds, of public spaces. And I discussed all this with my colleagues, whether they believe that we meet the requirements under the heading of a gender balance or gender neutral, or at least balanced urban development. And we received different opinions from without our staff. And it's always necessary to achieve quality, and lots of things that have been addressed as regards designing public spaces. We do have a certain standard. Of course, we want to get rid of places where people are afraid to go. And we discussed this quite intensely before this forum took place, this campus. And there are different requirements from different groups of the population, and there are various ideas of how to design such a public space. And if I listen at the presentations we have already heard, we have still a long way to go, because of course we don't yet collect gender-specific data, and we just wonder what do we have to take into consideration in terms of gender in order to meet women's requirements in a better way. What Ines pointed out, it is not just about gender mainstreaming, it's also about intersectionality. And how do we meet the requirements of young and old women? And are there differences between physically handicapped people, men and women, or differences between different cultural backgrounds? And all this needs to be involved when we discuss this issue. Data-based urban planning, as regards this, when it comes to that, we certainly don't yet meet all the requirements. even we have made major progress with participation of the civic society. We often see that particularly women who should participate more in this field. And we are experts in many ways, and we are the ones to ensure that that quality is included in those public spaces. So we have to keep a closer eye on the fact that people, women may raise their voices, and so that they are not outlevered by old white-haired men. So thank you very much. This was a clear explanation, Ms. Kriegel. Well, I just wanted to say in conclusion, as a German city is probably farther ahead than many other cities in Germany, but there's still a long way to go in order to meet all those really important requirements that have been mentioned here. Well, thank you very much. Before we
and etc. from the floor, I would like to ask very shortly, Milena, your position about...
Still digesting.
You are still digesting, so then you can still digest. But do we have then... First go to Bamberg. Do we have questions here from the floor? Yes, please. I mean, you are free to open the questions to Sri, to Ines, to everyone. Yes, or...
I think it's free for everyone to choose. Maybe
yes.
Somebody can answer it, because my work is quite from a practical side of the gender perspective in urban public spaces. So I'm wondering, in your experience, how important are not like special gender things like a special bus or whatever, but how important is it for gender equality in open spaces, like to be able to use it over hours? And with that, I'm talking about toilets. So is the topic, public toilets, a topic when you engage in gender planning?
Mm-hmm. Toilets, the topic of toilets and gender planning. This is a nice topic. Very nice. Yes, please.
Because I think it's suddenly like, whoa.
Okay, I think it was like 10 years ago that I was working for a Belgian foundation which was closely working together with UN Habitat. We got commission from UN Habitat, but also from International Union of Railways to do the benchmark of the quality of public spaces and amenities on different stations across Europe and Asia from the gender perspective. And we're talking almost 10 years ago, right? So we were this kind of weird group of people asking those kind of questions. So it's something that it's been nowadays also pushed into the gender place. Let's say, let's talk about those needs. And I can, from my experience from that research, is what the most time that we've spent noticing what's going wrong with public amenities, let's call them that way, is that they were forgotten in the initial design of all of those stations, you know, because there was so much emphasis of the technical efficiency of the railway system, or the technical efficiency of the bus station, or the technical efficiency of how the bus turns around, because that's the primarily thing. And what the passengers are doing, well, okay, let's give them some toilets somewhere, right? So even if it's been given according to the normative data, they will be given in a space is really hidden away, dark, somewhere under. And that was really the first time when I saw this disparity in whole gender thinking and gender mainstreaming. Of course, for men, it's easier to run down the stairs, you know, and just go some dark toilet and go back. But if you look from the gender perspective, it's completely different perspective. And what we have also noticed when doing the field research, even in Europe it was the case, the amount of things that women have with themselves, where they're carrying the children they're carrying, you know, sometimes the distance, the way how the platforms and how the access to these public amenities is being designed has been crucial. And it's been always designed for men who have just one, you know, one briefcase so they can go fast everywhere. But women have children, women have, you know, trolleys, bags, whatever, you know, it's already from that perspective, it's something wrong. So again, just I think to conclude is there is really a big task of retrofitting those older infrastructures, which is Europe is full of it. I just came back from Düsseldorf to Mannheim yesterday. It's an awful station, you know. It's really the toilets are awful. It's been put away somewhere because the infrastructure has been given the priority. So I think in planning of those things, now there is much more greater awareness that it needs to be accessible, clean, safe, etc. Not only for the sake of women, but also for the sake of other passengers.
Yeah, the city of Düsseldorf, huh?
Düsseldorf, yeah.
Okay.
Eric, Didier, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think the point that, our colleague just mentioned is very relevant. And also, the thing is that I think we have to shift this not only to also the education or the curriculum that we give to design student and all that, because so the idea and the concept, it has to also start from, you know, educating people. So, you know, the School of Architecture, the School of Planning, you know, have to have this, that there is a different need between men and women for public amenities. Yeah. And I just share that, you know, older, what do you call that, halls, municipal halls or municipal or community halls only have men toilets and don't have women toilets, you know, because back then only men, or you know, when what they call the facilities for the councillors or the people that are making decision making, you know, meeting rooms and all that. The meeting rooms only have toilets for men. They don't have toilets for women because back then, you know, decision making, people who are participating in decision making only have women. Only have men. And I have been to places like that where, do I, and I have to go far away, you know, from the main building because of that. So this is retrofitting and also newer building. And education, you know, curriculum has to change. Yeah, there's just a bit of and this must be a requirement. Yeah, for the future, and you know, for us to have transformative urban spaces that include both men and women, and even men. You know, now men also does changing of diapers, and so you don't have that role. You know, that specific role. Only women change diapers. So places like malls and things like that, they now have, you know, spaces where men and women, you know, changing with children. So men and women can go to these places together. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Sri. We have now 3 questions from the floor. We start here. Yes, please.
Thank you. Yes, I was wondering during these presentations that I think it's interesting that talking about gender-based space planning, we are talking about saving women from men or saving, like create safety places and prevention. And I thought, Milena said this morning that it's also about identification for the woman in the cities, but I think it's that big space in the gender equal planning that we are just talking about safety, and I'm a little bit shocked about this.
So we should not stop to talk only about safety, but we can talk about other things, no?
Yeah.
Well, it's quite, the discussion somehow comes always to safety, because it's such a big issue, you know. But I think, again, maybe it's good to look at it into a bit more integral, inclusive way, you know, broader way. Everyone wants to feel safe, and I know there is a lot of, especially in Rotterdam, there is a lot of youth aggression among boys, so there is not just safety of women, it's also safety of young boys, let's say, and when it comes to public amenities, I mean, everyone wants to have a good toilet and clean toilet, right? So it's not just but some cases are of course extreme. I think we cannot really move away from safety, because it's such a big issue in urban environment in general, because you can talk also about road safety, because women are also very much endangered, women and children. And it comes also from the walking is the preferred mode of women, let's say, because they are usually also disadvantaged in using some other ways of moving, or discouraged by bad design to use other ways of moving, you know. But if we are talking about other topics other than safety and security, what are then female topics or women inclusive topics? I don't know how to put it, but I don't really believe it in, you know, let's make cities for women, because I don't understand what it is really, making cities for women, you know. It's a bit,
yes, please, and then
too broad.
Yeah, I would like to add that I don't know. I don't want to say that it's not necessary. I just wanted to say that I would like that the topic doesn't end at the safety topic.
Yes, I understand what you.
Can I say something?
Very good.
Yeah, Ines.
Yes. Well, safety is one key aspect, but it's not the only one, and I would say it's not the main one, depending on what part of the world you live. For instance, if you live in many Latin American cities, or you live in Cairo, or some cities which are very dangerous, certainly safety is a very first major concern. But in Europe, it's not the first one. I would say that in Europe, the key concept is the concept of care. When it comes to looking at cities from a gender perspective. Care defined as all those activities needed for daily life that have an impact in the way you use the city. And because care tasks are not performed equally by men and women, and those statistics are saying that there's a big gender gap, that women statistically perform care tasks in a way that men don't. So if we look at care tasks and what are the implications for living the city on an everyday basis, we are really looking at how to plan not only from a gender perspective, which is how we are calling it, but also looking at the needs of women, of actual women. And we might not want to think that we are designing cities for women. No, we are designing cities for everyone. And in order to design cities for everyone, we really need to know how women live in the city because of the care tasks that they perform on a daily basis, which statistically men don't do. And so this is what gender planning and gender approaches to planning and design mean. It's mainly what are the implications of care for planning and for the distribution of buildings in the city, for transportation infrastructure, for how long it takes you to get to one place to the other in the times allotted when you have to combine taking care of people and also work in paid employment, which is what women do because they have this double workload, which men don't have, at least until now. We hope they would share equally, but the reality is that this is not the case yet. So that's why we talk about gender and looking at women's needs.
Okay, thank you, Ines. I just heard that we have only 2 minutes. No? Okay, but we have now. It's very interesting. A message from the mayor, and I think that somebody, Christian, you would like to present it or present the message from the
No, not from our mayor, but from the former mayor of Heidelberg, Mrs. Beate Weber-Schürholz, who is greeting the whole audience and who is following the session via the video stream. And she was not able to take it into the chat. So thank you very much, Mrs. Beate Weber-Schürholz, for giving us your ideas here. And she said, it is incredibly important to have women in so-called technical offices, civil and structural engineering, urban planning and development, etc., and that they are in the process very early. This is the only way to get a topic into the processes at a very early stage. Second, the municipality budget must be checked to ensure that the funds actually reach everyone, including the women. E.g., can women come to the municipality theater in the winter when it is dark without a car and without having to be afraid? Question. Are there areas for all supported with municipal funds, e.g. sports areas, not only for young men, but also for women? And the third remark, improvement in all addressed topics benefits everyone. The quality of life in a city is then fundamentally improved. These are my experience from being a Heidelberg mayor from 1919 to 2006. Many greetings and best regards to the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beate. Very good. Yes,
can we
still have questions there. Over there. Yes, please. Oh, you would like...
Is that address available?
Yeah. Yes, excellent. It's available. Your question, please.
My name is Sören Landmann, LGBTI Commissioner of the City of Mannheim. I applaud to what Mrs. Weber just said, because it's really absolutely true, and I would like to add that these questions should not only be raised for women, but also for other marginalized groups. And that they should be involved very early in processes, not only in spheres where they are used to be seen, but also in like technical areas. And I also want to add that if we talk about gender sensitivity, that it's not only about women from my perspective, but all people that are maybe not male, so also gender non-conforming people like trans, inter, non-binary people that are also very vulnerable. And that I really like what in the first speech was addressed, that reinventing gender norms and roles, that this is very important. But when we thinking of my community, I think that many people have so much internalized limitation of freedom that they maybe not even, if you ask them if they feel safe in the city, they say yes. But then you ask, do you, for example, are able to walk hand in hand with your partner, or do you dress what you want to, you wear what you want to wear, you walk the way you maybe want to walk, or you read the public book, the book in public you want to read, then they are not doing this. We did a study, and over 80% of the people from the community are limiting themselves in public space. And this is far too much, I think. And I think it's not only here in our metropolitan region, it's a general problem around the world, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it's important to collect this data also about discrimination. At the moment, discriminatory events are not measured, kind of. If there's someone, I don't know, assaulted, for example, it's basically not noted if there's homo-transphobic background or another background. So we have to collect these data. And I think another point is also that we should use knowledge of communities that still exists. For example, my grandma living in Mannheim, when she was older, she definitely knew which toilets are clean and safe. And also asking my community, that people know and tell each other which way you can walk at night, for example, that is safe. So maybe using this knowledge and then checking why these are safe spaces for them and putting that into planning processes, I think that would help a lot.
Thank you. Very good. I think we had another question here in the room. No? Do you want to react on that? Yes.
Just a quick outlook, because I know many cities spend a lot of money right now in the field of digitalization. And that's something that also shapes the future. And I think it's really key that we involve all groups in a society to contribute their knowledge, to contribute their priorities in these processes in order to shape a future that's really inclusive and that's human-friendly.
Excellent. Very good. Yes. Do you want to address or give us a Schlusswort or kind of conclusion of the discussion? Lee?
Just one comment about the role of women in planning, which deserve more attention. Of course, the urban planning, architecture, engineers, traditional men-dominated career and areas, but there is a woman movement process, like ISOCAP, International Society of City and Regional Planners. They have a working group called Women in Planning. It's not only to promote the role of women in planning process, but more to encourage women to take the leading position of planning process, which is missing actually. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Nicholas, you would like to say or some conclusion?
I just think that with many of these problems of public spaces, whether people feel safe, comfortable, whether they're user-friendly, is 90% perception. And so I think it's very necessary that we continuously inform ourselves by asking people how do they feel in these spaces? How do they feel as users of these spaces? It's a perception problem. It's not a factual problem. When we did safety mapping in 17 cities in Africa, for example, in the Middle East, we found that many of the public spaces that were considered unsafe or unuser-friendly, actually, that wasn't backed by facts. It was a perceptive problem. And so it comes down to the quality of the design, it comes down to the quality of maintenance of those spaces, it comes down to often small things that will make people feel more comfortable. And this is very important in urban planning, because if people's perception is that this street is not safe, they will not use it. And the more they abandon a public space, the more unsafe it becomes. Right.
Correct.
So we have to very, very often work on this perception problem.
Perception.
And that means continuous communication with the user, continuous communication with the consumer of this.
And as you mentioned also before, in all 18 languages.
Yeah.
Milena, you have some conclusion?
No, not particular conclusion. I think we covered a lot of topics already, and I totally agree. Safety is a lot about perception and maintenance. And a lot can be done with relatively small budgets and improvements to increase this for both genders or for all the genders. So, I mean, as a conclusion, I would say we need to again. I will fall back to data. We need again to include more women in providing the data, but also, as it was mentioned, to have more women in technical subjects, so they can really take those positions that are now being dominated. And there is this particular moment when in the West there is relatively enough girls and women entering the so-called beta or technical studies, but somehow they when they finish they just drop out the practice, and that's the thing that needs to be improved and worked on.
Thank you. I would like also to ask Ines or Alexandra maybe some conclusions from your perception, from the discussion, and also recommendations. What would you tell us? I hope Sri is also there. Ines?
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I think that the key things have been addressed. We need more women in technical and in political decision-making positions. We also need to be aware that being a woman does not guarantee gender awareness. So gender expertise is also needed. And we also need to be aware that men can be gender aware so that these policies can also be put forward by men, and we are seeing it here today. So one thing is having women in those positions, and then the other thing is gender expertise, and they overlap, but not necessarily all the time, and they shouldn't overlap, in fact, or they should both work both ways. And then the other important thing is that this is very well known that the issue of perception is very much related to subjective perception. The issue of safety, very much related to subjective perceptions. So we need to work there. And we also need to be very aware of what are the aspects of safety that can be addressed by the built environment, because not everything that relates to safety in the city can be addressed by interventions in the built environment. And we need to be aware of what are the limits and the possibilities of urban design to improve safety issues in the city. And finally, I would say that it's very important to have gender as an integrated part of the whole policy process at all levels, and particularly in the hardware of planning. So not just about what traditionally have been considered women's issues, but throughout all the key, but as a normal ongoing part of the machinery of planning at all levels and scales of plans. I would say that we need to keep this in mind, as it's quite easy to slip to just what is traditionally considered women's issues. And I have here just the book about the Berlin experience. I had it here in my library, so just to show you what was mentioned before. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ines. Thank you. Alexandra, some words about your conclusion?
Yes. When we talk about placemaking, we often think about starting from scratch by redesigning a public space, but I think we should look more at the existing infrastructure by having security audits, by talking to women who are users or citizens who live nearby, and to make sure that with smaller interventions we can already create substantially more comfort, because we only in Mannheim, we only have 6 or 7 larger areas that we redesign year by year, but it's also important to look at the existing infrastructures and spaces that we have that make out the majority of the spaces that we have in Mannheim and in other urban cities or urban conglomerations.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm not sure if Sri is still with us. Is she or not? Maybe not. I'm not sure about the time in Malaysia at the moment. Okay, but thank you so much for your contributions and for the very intense discussion. I would like to close here the Living Lab, or the Urban Lab, yes, and let's hope to have another lab later on, and focusing and implementing also all the discussions we have done here. Yeah, thank you so much, and see you later here.